I've seen a lot of guys get so wrapped up in wanting to buy and do a lot because they're trying to feed their employees. And I just said, that's really not a good strategy because I'm going to do one project and make more profit than you.
Hey everybody, this is Travis Dillard, and with me is Gabriel Hamill, and Mitchell Engel is joining us today. And we have a very important guest, Dustin Baldwin, who I'm going to get into his bio in a second. For those of you that don't know us, 0 to 100 is all about buy and hold, cash flow real estate. How do you replace your day job with passive income from real estate and achieve retirement number one or R1? I'm kind of being duplicative. I guess that's in our intro, but I just like to hear myself talk apparently. So I'm going to get into Dustin, his intro, and we're going to dig deep, man. And we got another vet on the line here. We've had quite a few military veterans on, which is awesome. So this guy's the real deal. He's 20 years in the Marine Corps. So Dustin Baldwin is a seasoned real estate developer, entrepreneur, and a retired Marine Corps gunny sergeant with over 2 decades of service. He is based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Dustin specializes in build-to-rent development, creating sustainable cash flowing investments by transforming underutilized land into high-performing residential assets like townhouses, triplexes, and mixed-use projects. And with a strong background in finance and real estate, bolstered by an MBA, Mitch, that stands for Masters of Business Administration, in case you didn't know that, Dustin has built a reputation for identifying high-potential development opportunities and maximizing equity from the ground up. As the founder of Velocity Development Group, he partners with investors to create innovative, scalable housing solutions while consulting with others to refine their real estate strategies. So man, Dustin, welcome to the show. There's all kinds of things in your bio that gets me excited, like obviously real estate, the word cash flowing, scale. So man, thanks for joining us. You're calling, are you in Florida right now? Are you calling in from Florida?
Yes, sir. I'm in St. Petersburg.
Oh, I was enlisted. You don't have to call me sir. And I was Air Force. I wasn't really, you were a Marine Corps guy, so you probably didn't count my service as real, but welcome. How's the weather in Florida right now?
Thank you guys for having me, Travis. Yeah, it's actually, we've been really lucky since the 2 back-to-back hurricanes. It's been gorgeous weather, like 71 degrees and sunny right now. So
yeah, I feel like it's like Florida's like, hey, it's really nice outside most of the time, and then every once in a while something comes through and just wipes out everybody.
Dustin, since this is not a show on weather, I will not ask you I don't care how the weather is in Florida at the moment. I am curious about your backstory. I mean, it's always interesting to me. We have had a lot of military veterans on, which I think there's definitely some parallels with real estate and such. But I'm curious. I'm always curious about investors' journey kind of prior to how they got into real estate, but also for the military veterans, like pre-military, was real estate on your radar? And if not, when did real estate get on your radar? And what were you doing pre-military? Take us back to young little Dustin.
Yeah, for sure, Gabe. Well, I joined when I was actually signed when I was 17. So before military, it was high school. So I signed up to be a fighter pilot, and the United States Marine Corps, and the recruiter basically said, hey, well, before you go to college to go become an officer, to go fly jets, why don't you join enlisted and be on the reserve so you can be a Mustang? Oh, he did.
Oh my gosh.
He did.
Oh my gosh.
He got me too,
by the way.
What a small sentence that changes your whole life right there.
Yeah, Dustin, I also joined at 17. The recruiter would come to our high school in the Humvee, take us to lunch, take us over to the FATS machines, basically like rifles hooked up to a big video game. I mean, it's very appealing for a young 17-year-old kid in high school for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Our guys showed up in uniform all the time, and the dress blues, they look super sharp. So you're like, man, he's this guy. And then start telling him you want to be a pilot. He's like, well, we launch fighter jets off of aircraft carriers. We're the best. I'm like, okay, cool. Where do I sign up? But yeah, he convinced me to go reserves to start and then go to college. But after I got through all my training, Paris Island, combat infantry course, and then also MOS school, I got back, checked into my unit in Orlando, and about 3 months later, they're like, hey, we're going to Iraq. And I was like, all right, well, I signed up for the Marine Corps for a reason. Let's go. So I deployed, and then I came home, started college. Then in between junior and senior year, I ended up deploying to Afghanistan with the same group of guys. An opportunity presented itself to go. So we were all like, let's go, let's do it. So when I got back from that deployment, I was studying real estate and finance in college at University of Florida. And I really liked the real estate. I was doing the appraisal course. They were talking about different types of construction and everything. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be active duty Marine Corps pilot. Maybe I just want to be in finance and real estate and grow my wealth, and then maybe make enough money one day to where I can just jump on the back of one of those F-18s. At the time, that's what I was thinking, but who knows if I'll ever be in one. But so I decided to stay reserves the rest of my career. So after college, I went and got a job with Lockheed Martin. That I knew somebody in the Marine Corps, moved up to DC. I still have not invested in real estate at this point, but I was about 3 months into my job at Lockheed, and I realized that corporate America is absolutely not for me.
So 3 months in, and you realize
3 months, man. You're like, this is over.
Dustin,
no way, man.
What years were these? What years were your deployments, and then when you went to college? Just for reference.
Yep. So my first deployment was 06 to 07. I actually started at a community college first 2 years in Melbourne, Florida. And then I got, because my SAT score sucked, by the way, which is common with entrepreneurs, I've found.
Oh, yeah. Combined is very low on this call.
Because you have to concentrate for more than 10 minutes. And that's no good for any.
Right.
You don't want to know what I did on mine. I literally went A, B, C, D, because I was cutting weight for a wrestling tournament. And I was like, I want to get the hell out of here. Like, yeah, it was bad. Anyway.
You probably still did better than Travis, though. So that's
right. That's true.
Yep. I remember my math was like really good, and the rest of it was total garbage. But anyways, University of Florida, I didn't have the SAT scores to get in as a freshman. I'm actually happy I didn't, because the freshman sophomore experience at a community college was way better. And then as a junior, I joined UF, and that was in 2008, and then 2009, and then from 2010 to 2011, deployed to Afghanistan, came home, finished degree in 2012, and then started in corporate America.
And no real estate up to that point?
No. So where I got into real estate is I quickly left corporate America, became a financial advisor with Edward Jones, moved from DC down to St. Petersburg because some friends were living down here at the time. Joined Edward Jones through their Forces program, which is for veterans. It allows you, they pay for you to get your license and everything. Had my own office here, and then I was making enough money to where I could be eligible for the VA home loan. So then I went out and bought my first house. I actually got paid to do it. The seller gave me $300, 0% down. And then I lived in the master, and I rented the 2 other bedrooms. And that was my first house hack, where I learned like, wow, I don't have to pay a mortgage. I can just buy a house and rent the rooms out and live for free and make a little bit of cash flow, which I think was like $400 a month at the time.
Oh yeah, we all house hacked our first property. I would, if I was guessing, I'd say 80% of our guests started with a house hack.
Well, I always recommend that to people, for those listeners that are starting that don't have a wife and kids, man, like there's no reason not to house hack. Yeah, maybe you don't want some stinky roommates, but you don't have to rent a Mitch. You can pick your roommates. You can get them in there. They can cover your mortgage. Hey, I do want to go backwards for a second, Dustin. When you were in college, you majored in finance, right? And did I catch that right? And it sounded like you got some exposure to real estate in college. Were you doing case studies in classes where they were talking through real estate underwriting or evaluating deals? Or did you sort of get exposure to real estate outside of your classes? Because I know finance, right? That you're talking about profit and loss statements, balance sheets, counting, macroeconomics. Like, how did you get exposure to real estate? What sort of planted the seed there?
Yeah, great question. So I was minored in real estate, and it was 5 courses in real estate that I took. A lot of it was around commercial real estate, actually, which seemed at the time so far out of reach. So I was just like, okay. But then I stumbled upon Bigger Pockets, and I picked up that blue book by Brandon Turner, Rental Property Investing. I think it was one of the first ones he ever wrote. And I read through that and I was hooked. I was like, wow, this is really, really good stuff. So I just implemented it when I could with the VA home loan.
And then at Edward Jones, you became an entrepreneur essentially, right? You did your 3-month blow your brains out stint in corporate America. Then you became an entrepreneur. Now, did you get like a salary, or was it like you eat what you kill? I think it's sort of like eat what you kill, right? Grow your own book of business.
Commission, salary.
Yeah.
The Forces program is a little different. They set you up with a salary. So you make like $85,000 a year, and then you build up to the commissions. I think the first 2 years you're on salary, and then they switch you into a more commission-based role. I was actually doing really well there, but one of the guys that I house hacked to was approached me one day. He was a fellow Marine. And he said, hey, dude, like, I like your work ethic. I like how hard you work, and you're really good at sales and like talking to people. Would you want to come on and help us start this prisoner transport company? And I was like, prisoner transport? What? I'm not transporting inmates, dude. I wear a suit and tie to work every day. I like my job. So long story short, I ultimately did decide to leave Edward Jones, and I went and moved to Orlando and helped them start this prisoner transport company that went on to grow very quickly. I became the president of that corporation, and then we merged with a larger entity, and then exited in an ESOP in 2019. And then with that money, I got into the development game.
And so at Edward, sorry to go back to Edward Jones, you were selling, right? You're in sales. I always say sales is such a critical skill. It's learn not. You're not born with it. But you are also providing financial advice to your clients. I mean, you'll fight when it comes to, so you were bringing them on, and then you were providing financial planning for them at this point.
Yeah, that's right. And Edward Jones has a unique approach that actually ended up serving me well in the real estate space, where they put you out there and they make you door knock. I door knocked 8,000 doors in Pinellas County.
I had no idea.
That'll toughen you up.
They make you door, yeah.
8,000 doors. Wow.
Yeah.
So you go into, you mentioned you sold the company. What is that, just real quick, what did that company grow to, like, say, employee count? I know that's kind of a vanity metric, but how big did that company grow for prison transport? Like, that's such an interesting, by the way, that's just like so out. I wouldn't even think of that as like a company, but anyway.
I actually remember you sharing about this business, Dustin. And I was like, I've never met anyone that owned a prisoner transport company. If I remember, was it one of the only, if not the only, private prison transport companies in the country?
About 3 years ago, probably when we talked about it, that it was one of the only legal ones. But there's been, since, people have started to figure out how profitable it is, and they're popping up.
There's illegal ones where they throw you in the back of your station wagon and cruise you across town.
That's called a prison escape, I think.
We were actually talking about starting a 0 to 100 prison transport company. 100 prisoners we'll start at 0 and work our way to 100 prisoners. Yeah.
We'll get there.
I do want to digress. What's your one craziest story that you can share on transporting prisoners, just for the entertainment purposes of our podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't actually do many transports myself. I was business development. So I was in charge of like flying out with sheriffs and selling.
Just like when your employees, whoever. Yeah. Like what happens?
Yeah. So, no, there was an opportunity to go to Hawaii, and I was like, I'll do it. So it's transporting one inmate back from Hawaii, Honolulu. And I flew over there, spent like 4 days there, got to see the island first. And then I go to pick this guy up at the jail, and they give me his clothing, because they put you in a jumpsuit when you go to jail, and you get the clothing. It's a Ziploc bag with a Spider-Man outfit in it with red Air Jordans. And I'm like,
oh my gosh,
Mitch, there's no way I'm transporting this guy.
This is going to be a great ride.
So yeah, he put on the Spider-Man outfit. We got in the van, and then I had to go to Kmart, man. I had to go get him different clothes. There's no way I'm breaking little kids' hearts and minds by strolling a guy in the Spider-Man outfit through the airport.
Cuffed. I love that.
Oh, yeah, that guy was interesting. He was very much into like InfoWars, conspiracy theorists, and I had to listen to him for a good 10 hours back to Key West.
So after you sold, you had an exit, you started developing. You said, what does that look like? What was your first, and where was your head too? Like, was it just kind of like you were stumbling forward toward real estate, or during when you were building the prisoner, transport company, were you thinking, look, once I exit, I'm going to go build this development company, I'm going to invest in real estate? Like, where was your mindset there?
Yeah, I'll actually back up to with Edward Jones. So once I started house hacking, when I moved to Orlando to go work for the prisoner transport company, I just put a third tenant in. So now I have a co-living house, right? So I have a bunch of roommates living in it. It's cash flowing well. I was like, this is great. I'm going to do this again. Because at the time, long-term rents for the houses were not as high as what you could rent bedrooms for. Since, in this market, it's caught up. It's surpassed it. Unless you have like 8 bedrooms in a house. So I went and bought another one in Orlando. I bought another one in Brandon, Florida. And I started buying these co-living houses, like turnkey, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. I didn't add any bedrooms. I just threw guys in it with long-term leases.
Were you getting owner-occupied debt on that, Dustin? Were you getting owner-occupied debt, moving in and then moving out and then renting a room and move? I mean, because that's a great way to get great debt, is if you get owner-occupied debt, you get the best interest rate, 30-year AM, the best terms. And you're owner occupied, but you only have to live in it for a certain period of time. Then you can move out. That's a great way to accumulate assets when you're first starting.
But that's exactly what I did. I got owner occupied debt and I was in the threes, and I still own those houses today in the threes, and I've since refied as well. So yeah, it was really, really good. And then to answer your question, Mitch, like it never was like, oh, I'm going to get into development. It was, hey, there's a piece of land in a great neighborhood surrounded by breweries and like really trendy stuff for 80 grand. Like, let's build our house here. So I picked up the piece of dirt, and then I hired a builder to come in to build us our house. And then at the end of it, we had like $400,000 in equity. I was like, holy cow, this is incredible. Like, I need to do this again. So then I went out and bought another lot in the same neighborhood. I wiped the house out, put up a single family house. We ended up Airbnb-ing that one and did over $100,000 in gross the first year. And then we're like, well, same floor plan, 4 blocks away. Why don't we just move out of our house and Airbnb this one too? So then we did, and we moved into a nicer neighborhood, more family friendly, away from the breweries, more in the where my wife could walk around with the baby and a stroller at night and not have to worry about, you know, the things you worry about in urban areas. But at that point, I was like, this is really good. So then I said to myself, I need to be able to scale this. And I wanted to build it, rent it, refinance it, and then do it again. So that's the strategy I did. Yeah. And then from single family houses, it transitioned into looking for zoning codes that allowed for more than 1 unit per parcel. And I would buy a house on it or buy a piece of vacant dirt, and I would put a set of townhouses on it. The very first one I did, for example, I was all in on the project for $850,000. It was 2 duplexes, 2 3-bedroom, 3 baths, 2,100 square feet each. It ended up appraising each side for $850,000.
Oh my gosh!
Wow. How'd you finance that property?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
So that property, great question, because it was my first one where it was custom and I was the developer. I decided to do it all cash because I didn't want the holding costs of it taking a little longer. I understand that a lot of people don't have that luxury, but we had the exit from the company, so I just decided to use my own money. Now that I've learned it and I've made my own mistakes with hiring not good architects, ripping up trusses, all that, now to scale, I bring on investor capital, and then we also use bank debt. So we have a capital stack, but the first one I did was all cash.
Yeah. Dustin, I have a question. You bring up scale. That's a big part of 0 to 100. We talk about scale. I mean, in a lot of ways, 0 to 100 started because Travis and Mitch were curious. You know, why is it that some people take 20 years and they own a duplex and other people scale to hundreds and sometimes thousands of units in a short period of time? Some people are looking to scale because they love the game. Sometimes it's cash flow. Sometimes it's, building equity, building net worth. What was your motivation to scale? You did a couple of these deals and then you said you asked yourself, like, how do I scale this? I'm curious your mindset around why you wanted to scale. What was the desired outcome to go bigger and do more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here in St. Petersburg, I think that there's a unique opportunity as there is in some other cities in the U.S., but I believe it's extremely undervalued for what we have here. And I wanted to be able to own as much real estate, new construction here in Pinellas County, in St. Petersburg, Florida, as I possibly could over the next 10 years, because I think when the secret comes out, it's just going to be explosive growth. And I want to ride that appreciation train while in the meantime, also earning cash flow off of all of those projects.
That's awesome. I love this strategy. It's interesting because I meet developers who develop and sell, right? And then I meet a lot of buy and holds. But the way that you just lay that out was like, no, I develop, refi, and then hold for cash flow. And it feels like if I'm hearing you right, like you're really creating your value on the build. You find the right land, you build the right thing. You got a lot of value to unlock there. You refi, maybe you're pulling out all your money or all your money plus some or whatever. That depends on the deal. But then your mindset is, look, I'm going to hold in cash flow throughout time. Am I hearing you right? Is that sort of your strategy today as well?
Yeah, it is. I will say that interest rates have made it a little tricky, where we did have to turn one of them into a build to sell because it just did not make sense.
Got it. There's always a one-off. Yeah.
So it's not the BRRR, it's the BRRR, it's the BRRR. It's the instead the buy.
build.
Travis has been working on this the entire
I've been
time, by
writing
the
it
way.
down your resume. We've got
Buy, build, rent, refinance, repeat. Yep.
Do you create so much value in these deals because you're building, right? And I do, like, that's a great way, and you're smart. That's a great way to build a lot of value and equity. Do you generally get all your initial capital back out? And so you're no cash in and you're just holding it for cash flow?
Yeah. On the last three deals I did, the ones that we're looking at in the future, we're projecting them super conservatively, and we're projecting having to leave $50,000 to $100,000 in just so that they continue to cash flow. And we don't want it to be too tight, because that's how you get yourself in trouble when you over leverage. So, but then the cash on the money you're leaving in is like 15 to 18%. So like, I don't care. I'll leave the cash in.
What were the last 3 deals? Were they, what property, what size? What did those look like?
Yep. So last 3 were the set of townhouses that I just talked about. It was a triplex that we're wrapping up right now. I'm getting rented up. And then the other one, we actually ended up having to sell that one. It was a single family house, but we're also now doing a set of townhouses, and we found a zoning code that allows us give each townhouse an accessory dwelling unit behind it. The 4 units total
nice.
on a 5,000 square foot lot. So now it's a townhouse with a rentable unit in the back. And I'm building, there's a big shortage here in St. Petersburg with larger rentals. So like between 3 and 4 bedrooms, new construction rent really well here. And I'm getting great rents for them. And then on top of that, the 1-1s rent really well. So now you have both. You have 2 sets of each on one lot. So it's going to enable us to be able to most likely pull out all of the capital when we're done.
It seems like a lot of areas are sort of loosening up their guidelines on ADUs or DADUs or whatever you call it.
Huge
right?
opportunity.
Like they're they're finding that like there's so much untapped land, and if they can sort of regulate it, it's built under code. Do you see that? It sounds like, are they loosening up guidelines where you are in St. Petersburg as well? Is it easier to do?
I wouldn't say they're loosening them up. They've created an open mind around one zoning code that was previously just for single family. They allowed you to now do up to 4 units on there. However, there's very strict guidelines you have to meet. And that's what they did because they didn't want, the neighbors were not happy about this change. So in order to help the neighborhoods and to help the general public swallow this pill that we do need more housing in St. Pete, there was very strict parameters as far as the design, the FAR, which is the floor area ratio, and how much you can build on these lots. You can't just build an 85-foot structure of 4 units. Like
you can't have guys like Mitch come along and put a 30-unit mobile home park on a 5,000 square foot lot.
I just stack them. I got 3-plex, three mobile homes.
I do agree though. I think we've had a few people on the show that are doing a lot in ADUs, and I feel like there's just a lot of untapped potential because so many of these markets, everybody's screaming for infill, getting more density in the amount of land that you have. It's going to create more supply, which is going to hopefully bring the cost of housing down. And you've got these massive lots in a lot of these cities where you have one house on it. So I think, as long as you're adhering to certain codes and it's not just like a Frankenstein monster, I think it's a great solution. And I think everybody wins. The renter wins, the investor or developer wins, and just the general housing market wins with more affordable housing. So I love that, man. I think there's some really cool opportunities there.
Dustin, I'm curious what advice you have for those that want to develop. I think I've met a lot of people that have lost their shit in development. I own a lot of real estate that has great zoning, but I've never even had a single family home build. I've never done any kind of new construction. And when I run the numbers, it's hard for me to make sense of it. Right. And so I'm curious to what advice you have, but also what have you done to really mitigate that risk when you are developing and building something new?
Yeah, for sure. If someone's getting started and has never done it before, first thing I would say is find a great builder that's willing to also consult with you on the development side, the design and the planning side of it, and then help you figure out highest and best use, because it's likely you're not going to know the code to do that. A consultant is key. Unless you have the time to dig into the city muni code to learn it inside and out, and you have the money to take the risk to do it yourself, then do it yourself. That's what I did. But you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money by getting somebody that knows what they're doing. And I would say location is everything. If you're building new construction in a nice area and you can get the land for a reasonable price, it's really easy. I wouldn't say easy. It's easier to make the numbers work. Where I struggle to make the numbers work are areas that are, the land's super cheap, but nobody's going to want to rent there because it's not walkable to anything. You can't jump on the bus to go to the beach. So the location is the first thing I look for. And then I try to look at highest and best use. And if I can put multiple units there, it helps spread out the cost of construction, but also brings my rents up. So it helps to do it. And I won't, honestly, I'm pretty picky with what I build. I know there's guys out there that build with like very small margin. I want huge margins on my deals because if anything goes wrong or the market downturns, I still want to make a profit. Even though it might not be a huge profit, at least that's protected from like a downturn. So I pass on a lot of deals that look okay or look good for some people. Like I look for great deals and I'm willing to wait for them. So I'd say that that's also a huge importance when you're looking for your first development.
Yeah, I mean, people oftentimes, so many people look at the upside and they're so focused on the upside and they get rose-colored glasses. And my advice to those listening would be always do a downside assessment, which is what you're doing. You're like, okay, so the margins are thin. What if construction cost? What if there's a 30% overrun on construction? What if the hold period's longer and I'm paying, more debt service? Like what if there's so many different variables that you have to have. And I love the fact that you're just, and this concept could be applied to all kinds of real estate investing. Just sit back, wait, know what the hell you're doing, and always run a downside assessment. And it could take, this guy's really, really, really busy doing 5 mediocre deals and risking his shorts and stressing out and having sleepless nights. You're just sitting back waiting like a sniper. No pun intended with the Marine Corps reference, but you're a sniper sitting back waiting for the most opportunistic opportunity, so to speak. And then one deal can make way more money than those 5 deals. So yeah, I love that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of guys get so wrapped up in like wanting to buy and like do a lot because they're trying to feed their employees. And I just said, that's really not a good strategy because I'm going to do one project and make more profit than you.
So I got a question. I'm kind of the same as Gabe. Like I haven't developed anything. I have run the numbers, just run pro formas on different things, never really been able to make it work. And I don't know if I'm being, I don't know what I don't know, right? It's kind of not my game, but when you're looking at a project, what is your margin of safety? Like, somebody, a contractor comes back or GC comes back and says, look, it's going to cost this much. Like, do you have sort of like rule of thumb where you're like, look, we're going to add 25% buffer, or we're going to like, how do you be very conservative about these projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I look at it as case by case basis. I haven't like set a specific percentage of buffer, but I'm looking at like, okay, is there 300, 400, 500, even $1 million in profit on this project? If there's anything less than like 300 grand, I'm probably not going to do it. So, and that is when it's done, I could turn around and sell it. If I wasn't going to rent it, I could turn around and sell it same day and then pocket 300 grand and walk away.
You're building in such a profit margin that's your margin of safety. It sounds like. I mean, you're pretty aggressive with, even if you're half wrong, you're still fine.
Yeah, and I will say it's also market specific. Like I've tried to look at other markets where it's kind of the build cost is very similar. Some are different because they build differently, but generally speaking, your build cost is going to be pretty close, give or take 100 grand up or down. But the price per square foot sold is vastly different. So I don't know that I could go do this in Birmingham, Alabama, and it makes sense. But here, if I'm building for $225 a square foot and I'm selling at $500 a square foot, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and the land costs too, right? Because I know where we live, lots could go for $300,000-$400,000 in Oregon or Washington, depending on the area. What's the average lot price for something you would be interested in? Is it still 80 or is it now like 200 plus?
No, gosh, I wish it was 80. No, we're actually in line with 300 to 400,000 on market for a lot, a 5,000 square foot lot. However, I get some off market deals. There's also different things in St. Pete that not a lot of people know about is overlays that allow you to build additional density and give you parking bonuses, so you don't have to have as many parking spots that I've learned. So I look for specific areas, and I might pay $300,000 for a lot, but I can develop, a really nice product where it will absorb that land cost and make sense.
So do you feel like your target right now is like small multifamily? Is that where your head's at, or are you like, look, I want to go bigger multifamily or to single family? Like right now in this current moment, where's your head on that, or does it just depend on what the property allows?
Yeah, so great question. So I would say in St. Petersburg is just all infill lots. There's no big pieces of land ready to be, developed in the multifamily unless you're downtown corridor, which is something that you're playing a totally different game. If you go down there, you're raising like $50-100 million. I'd say like single family homes. If I'm going to do single family home construction, it would be a one-off, and it would just be a no-brainer where I could pick up a lot for $200,000, put a house up for another $600,000. I'm in it for $800,000. And I can turn around and sell it for 1.6 because there are those opportunities that happen. So I do pick those up. But my main focus for the cash flow and the actual long-term portfolio where I'm collecting these real estate is I like the townhouses. I like the small multifamilies. And I also am starting to look into larger townhouse plays to where we can build a set of 10, sell 4 of them, get all of our money back and own the rest free and clear and just cash flow them and let them appreciate. So that's another thing that we're looking at right now.
So you're still focused, even with development, it sounds like you're still really focused on buy and hold cash flow real estate. If you can build to rent, that's the preferred strategy versus selling these things off.
100%. Yeah. Because I am long real estate. It might be a yo-yo on an escalator, right? But it's always going to be going up. And like in 10 years, I know that every piece of real estate that I sold, I'm going to regret.
Dustin, what's your operations look like? Do you have like in-house construction that's building these? Do you have a couple of GCs that you work with and they work with subs? Do you have asset managers, property managers? Like help us understand, because you've got a pretty robust operation, and I'm sure people listening are going, wow, that Dustin's busy. He's running around, building houses and swinging hammers. And what does that look like for you?
So you're actually going to be surprised to hear this. I've actually become very good with making relationships with other people's businesses. So my team consists of an architect that has their own business. It consists of a builder that's got their own business. It consists of like a bunch of people that I work with. My internal team for velocity development consists of me and my EA. And I'm thinking about bringing on a project manager in-house. We're at 8 projects right now active. When we scale that up to be, larger, I am probably going to want somebody internal just to double check over the builders. But the key is I have really good A-class players and contractors working with me. And I've gotten to a point where I've outgrown my builder I was using. So then I've been out there making relationships with other builders. And now I have 4 builders that I can go to help me build this out. And I have thought about going and getting a GC license. I've thought about bringing all the stuff in-house. Well, exactly. So I remember I went and sat down with somebody that was a GC here in St. Pete. And I remember I'm a developer. So I'm thinking, man, I want to be a GC. I want to do this myself. I want to build a construction company. I remember he sat across the table with me and he's like, I can't wait to be able to have the opportunity to become a developer one day. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? You're a contract, you're a GC, dude. Isn't that like the dream? He's like, absolutely not. Like you have the money. You get to employ me. I have to go do the work and manage all the subcontractors. It's a lot of work. And I was like, thank you for that coffee because you just saved me a lot of heartburn, a lot of time.
Dustin, I actually love hearing you say this because I end up in a lot of circles with a lot of investors. They're all investing a different way. And I don't think there's one right or wrong way, but a lot of times it's these huge teams. And to me, it feels like such a headache and so many employees. So like my business, it's all third party property management. I don't have a bunch of employees. I don't have a lot of in-house stuff. And so for me, it's refreshing to hear like, hey, I really focus on building great relationships with these contractors and these other folks that help me out. And so I think it just really outlines there's a lot of ways to do it. And it sounds like, and I'm curious if this is correct, that you're pretty clear on what's important to you, what you want your life to look like, and maybe you've designed your business around that versus just building this huge team because everybody else is building a huge team.
Yep, that's exactly right. Like what's important to me is time with my family. I want to be able to jump on an airplane next week if I want to go and travel with them and have a vacation. And am I going to be able to do that if I'm managing a bunch of subs? Not only that, if I have a team I'm responsible to put food on their table, I'm now going to be pressured to go find deals to get them paid.
Yeah. We saw a lot of that in the run up where these big syndicators are being forced because they've built these large teams, they have to pay their salaries. So they have to just go do deals and take acquisition fees. And they're in trouble now and they're losing investors' money because they took mediocre deals and they talked themselves into these deals so they can take these acquisition fees. Another thing too, I think a lot of people think if you're going to do big things, and which you're obviously doing, you're going to scale even bigger, you need to have a lot of employees, right? That's another vanity metrics, Mitch. You're talking about when I was an entrepreneur, I sold my company too, but back in the day, like I have 500 employees. You're like, wow, I'm sorry. That sounds awful. And people,
terrible.
Yeah, people forget that you can do big things and have like one executive assistant, right? Because your who, we always say, who's your who? Like go find your who's going to help you achieve your goals can be third parties. And they only get paid when you're producing stuff. You're not sitting on payroll that you have to pay regardless of their production. But I love that philosophy.
It's so funny too, hearing you say that, Travis, because like I always, like for me, I was always like, oh, I felt so proud I have no employees. I do have one now because I have a RV park that's more of a business that I have a one W-2 guy that runs that full time. But it's like, yeah, some people are like, oh my gosh, I have all these employees. And I'm like, I have no employees. And I like it that way.
But real estate allows that. I mean, you're just putting a puzzle together. You find an opportunity, you find the money, you find the architect, you find the GC, you find I feel like that's different than most industries. A lot of industries, I think you do need to build a team. I'm guessing. I don't know. Real estate, you don't need to.
I think it outlines there's just a lot of ways to do it. I mean, I've always said you line up 100 real estate investors, they're all doing it differently. I know, men and women, they love running a team. They love having a bunch of employees like that brings them joy. That's a positive thing for them.
That wouldn't work for us because Mitch hates people. He's a curmudgeon.
He's right. He's right. I do not want a team.
And people hate Mitch, small team, so it works out good. No, I've never met anyone that hates Mitch. All right, so back to Dustin. What's on the horizon? What are you looking forward to now? What's your focus going forward?
Yeah, I honestly think it's trying to figure out how to make these deals more profitable, make them cash flow more, and doing a lot more. And maybe it's getting into a bigger project because it's going to be the same amount of work, whether it's a 4-unit or if it's a 10-unit townhouse development. So, I have a capital partner in one of the deals, and we've just talked about like we both kind of want to move forward into like a 10, 15-unit townhouse development that's infill. I think that's probably next. And, back to the scaling of the internal team thing, I think about this a lot because I'm doing 8 projects right now, and on average, I'm paying a builder a $200,000 fee per project. So you think about that, it's like 1.6 million, right? So if I had 1.6 million in the bank, I could hire a hell of a team to where I could still be removed, but you really aren't removed. Like that's where I keep landing. It's like, you're still the guy that is at the end of the road that everybody's going to look to. So I'm like, it's just not for me at this time in my life. I have a 21-month-old, like it's just not.
Sometimes it's worth paying for lifestyle.
Exactly.
Worth paying for lifestyle.
But also when you take a holistic approach to like success, like people, I don't know, a lot of people look at success as just money, but it's not just that. Like you just said, you have a 21-month-old, like, or 21-month-old. It's like, it doesn't make sense. You'd rather give up some of that cash for lifestyle.
For freedom.
Therefore you can be, it's freedom. That's the number one thing. I meet people all the time that are very financially successful. And I always remind myself, I still don't know if they're successful. I need to know more. Like, what do their kids think of them? What does their wife think of them?
It's funny, I was thinking about that. My son asked me what my favorite word was yesterday. We're driving back we're out driving, and I go, no, I think it's like freedom. I think it's like liberty. But I got to thinking more. I think we're free. We live in the best country on earth. I'm biased, obviously. I live here, but there's also a lot of people that are slaves in this free country. And so there's a different level of freedom
100%.
that you can get to by being an entrepreneur, by taking the red pill, by thinking like a contrarian. And real estate is probably the greatest equalizer in this country, at least, to take people that from all walks of life and can give them that next level of freedom. And it is the most leverageable asset on earth. Gabe says that all the time, which a lot of people, when they think of leverage, they think going getting a bank loan or raising equity from investors. But it's the most leverageable when it comes to partnering with people that have, with other people that have businesses and teams. Like you can accomplish huge things with like one guy sitting in an office working 3 hours a day. So buy real estate is what we're trying to say. This whole thing is about go buy some real estate.
Yeah, Dustin, I'm curious. You've mentioned relationships many times. That's definitely a pillar of the 0 to 100 tribe. Relationships. I mean, I say it all the time. Every deal I've ever done has come from a conversation or relationship because one, I'm willing to open my mouth and share with people what I'm doing, what I'm looking to do. Or I go into a relationship with really no expectation, right? Like I like people. I meet someone. They may be an acquaintance. They may become a close friend. We may or may not do business together. I don't care. But when I look back on the deals, they've all come from conversations and relationships. And I think it's easy to say, but I think people sometimes have a hard time trusting that, right? Real estate has a transactional aspect to it. And I always say that's the easy part. And for some people, it's hard to really wrap their head around what relationships mean and what that looks like. And so I'm curious, it sounds like you've built your business and a lot of the contractors and different people around in your life and around your business is because of relationships. What advice do you have for those that are like, I'm having a hard time building relationships. I don't know how to find these people. I don't know how to meet these people. I don't know what conversations to have. Like, what would you say?
I mean, I would say that every city has a real estate investing meetup. Go on meetup.com, find them, or get a part of a mastermind like this, and connect with other people. Be truly authentic and be very vulnerable because people will learn what you are wanting to do and they're going to be attracted to that and want to do business with you. The second that you get into a group or a networking event and you start going in there with the intent to sell something or get something from the group, people are going to see right through that. You have to go into these groups with the intent to serve. How can you help them? And then when you are adding value to someone else, it will come back to you tenfold. So when we're creating relationships, that's the biggest piece of advice. Don't go into it thinking, what am I going to get from you? Think about it, what can I give to you? And it will work out just fine.
I couldn't agree more. I love that you said that. Everyone needs to go back and listen to that 10 times, just those two sentences. I mean, it's so true, so valuable, so important.
We had a Deed on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about working for free. He's like, how can I show up and provide value from somebody without the expectation of getting paid to learn and to meet people? And that's been a huge stepping stone in his success. So I love that. And I love the fact that you say, show up, be genuine, be authentic. Don't try and bullshit people because they'll read right through that. And just think, how can I just provide value to this person? And the networking effect's really interesting. Like how we met Gabe, we met Gabe, and through Gabe, we met a bunch of other people, or you meet one person, they introduce you to another person. If you go back through and look at any big thing you've done in your life and in your entrepreneurial career, oftentimes, like Gabe says, you're people. It's a networking effect. So
one conversation, one relationship, one idea away from taking your life to the next level.
Absolutely. Yep. One tactical question for you, Dustin. Are you property managing the ones that you hold yourself? Do you hire a third-party property manager? What does that look like for you?
So on the last two, I hired a placement firm to fill them with tenants because I just don't have the time to go through that process. But once they're in, with being new construction, it's very easy. So my EA now runs all of that, and she's very good at it. She's become very good at it, and it's pretty systematized to where it doesn't take a whole lot of time.
Is your EA virtual or is it someone local to your area?
No, 100% local. That's all I will hire as an executive assistant. If I'm hiring a VA, I would say a virtual would be okay. But for what I do, she works in my office right over there on that desk. So
how long these are A-class properties. These are nicer, new builds. You're getting higher quality tenants that take care of the property. They're probably professionals. What's the average stay of one of your tenants? Because you look at an apartment complex, every 12 to 18 months, you're cycling people. Is that the same with these townhouses or single family houses, or is it much longer?
Yeah. So the builds that I'm putting together is what I've found, at least on the last few of them that have been leased up, the rents are, close to $5,000 a month. So it's usually people that are growing their family. They want to get out of the apartment, come into a house, and it's a stepping stone to go buy their own house.
Sure.
So I'd say anywhere from 12 to 24 months. Some of them are just happy being permanent renters. They have no desire to own right now. They're just going to wait for the market, the right opportunity, and they don't mind. So, but a lot of them, I just had a tenant where I'm a realtor here in town as well. And it came to me as hey, I think we're looking for a new house, and it was funny because we actually were building a brand new home, single family house, and it was a build to sell. And my tenant approached me and was like, I'm looking for a house. I was like, well, we just built this one. Would you like to come see it and give you a great deal? They literally were like, we love this house. So we were able to sell it to them. So my tenant went and bought one of our other projects. And now I'm already I have 2 applicants to fill their spot in my rental anyways. So it's interesting how that worked out.
But love that. Relationships.
So I got a question, going back a little bit, because like you seem you're very successful, very humble, very, very like, I would say softer spoken than I remember gunnery sergeants in my past, because I met a couple of you guys, and so it was a louder experience, I'll be honest with you. But all joking aside though, like how did the Marine Corps shape you? What did you take from that? Do you feel like do you feel like that built a really strong foundation for you? Because like today I feel like, and obviously I'm just getting to know you on the podcast here as well, but like it seems like a quiet confidence about you. And I'm just curious, like, do you feel like, where would you attribute that? Or is there someone in your life that was really effective? Like, yeah, where would you attribute that?
I was with Dustin last week. He yelled at me the entire time.
Well, see, right when he got on the podcast, he goes, I was a gunnery sergeant. I'm like, oh, great. He
took a sedative
my
and got
last
on the
experience
podcast.
was not great. Yeah. Anyway.
I'm usually a pretty laid back guy. So, I mean, like, I'm a gunnery sergeant and I've been in the reserve. So luckily I've been very much exposed to the civilian community, and that like knife hand gunnery sergeant approach doesn't always work.
You're like, all right, I got to flip the switch. Yeah.
So I just gave my speech after 20 years. I retired from the Marine Corps last Saturday. So I just talked about like everything that I got out of the Marine Corps. Thank you guys. It's very interesting. I actually owe the Marine Corps a lot of who I am today. You know, from the day I stepped foot on those yellow footprints when I was 18 years old to where I am today, like the tools that they gave me throughout the process of training, like discipline, first and foremost, grit, like just the ability to like not take no for an answer and be able to adapt and overcome is what the Marine Corps says. And just the teamwork, like they teach you teamwork, because sometimes the teamwork and being able to problem solve is life or death. And you learn that. So at that point, you come back to civilian life where nobody's trying to kill you. And it's like, oh, stuff could be hitting the fan everywhere. Things could be going wrong, but it's easy because it's just a solving a problem and no one's going to die, hopefully, knock on wood. But so I would say the Marine Corps and being in the Marine Corps and also the brotherhood that I made in the Marine Corps have really helped shape who I am today and opened up a lot of doors. It goes back to the relationships comment. And then having that bullet point on my resume in corporate America really helped, but I mean, it's irrelevant now. But also when people do business with me now, they know like, hey, Dustin's a Marine. He's going to expect a higher level of professionalism. And, you know, I've come to be known in my circle as more of the direct person where I'm not afraid to say what I feel. And I'm a little, I'm not afraid to hurt feelings sometimes. But people know that, and they also appreciate it. Some people appreciate the bluntness and the directness, and while others don't. But it is what it is. It's a delicate balance there between different types of people. So,
Dustin, I can echo that. I was Air Force, and sometimes they would mess up my latte when I'd order at the Starbucks on base, and so we really
times got hard for Travis a couple times.
Yeah.
I can. Hey, he's like, hey, I need another one right now.
Hey, Dustin, what does your current portfolio look like now? How many units do you have cash flowing? Do you plan on, I'm assuming if you've got a lot of units sitting at 3% debt, I'd hold on to those for a long time. Like, give us a little idea what it looks like currently.
Yeah, it's actually not as big as what you'd think. I'm not one of those guys that's going to say, I have 100 units because I'm building A-class properties. I only need a few. So I have 12 properties right now, of which 4 of those are under development. And the rest of them are all rentals, like A-class rentals pulling in, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a month in rents.
Awesome. That's phenomenal.
And that's actually properties. I'm sorry. And then of those properties, some of those properties have 4 doors. So if I were to break it down by that, it would be a little bit more. So
yeah, that's what I was referring to.
That's
rentable
awesome.
units. Yeah. And you're right. So we say 0 to 100, it's really just a litmus test. It's just like, you could have one property, large triple net property, industrial property like Gabe that can get you to passive income freedom. Others, it could be like us. You have mobile home lots, and those rent at $300 a month. So yeah, it's definitely a kind of a vague number. But good to know where you're at right now.
The new new construction development stuff's a little bit different. If I were flipping, I think it'd be easier to collect and scale that very quickly. But development takes such a long time. It's, now that we're doing 8 to 10 at a time, it will eventually start to creep up. But the great thing about A-class in great neighborhoods is that the appreciation goes up, and then it sometimes makes sense to sell and redeploy that capital somewhere else. So yeah, it's a balance between cash flow and the equity portion for sure.
Yeah. It's an interesting game though. We talk to our elites a lot about like finding the hidden value, finding the gold, in an opportunity that nobody else sees. And you're the first person that I think that we've had on the podcast that is building for that. It builds to unlock massive value and then refis and holds. So I love this. And I love the A-class too, by the way. We were just talking about that. We're in mobile home park, so it's like the very opposite of A-class, I'd say, the tenant base. But just like the lack of headaches, like your rent collection is probably way smoother. Like, do you find it to be very, like, once you put in tenants, it's very low maintenance burden? Is that true?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We got the renters that rent our units are most of them are all making over 6 figures, never been late on rent. I would never even think to need to evict them. I'm not dealing with paycheck to paycheck. I'm dealing with entrepreneurs themselves, or like a lot of them are like in the tech space, or they're business owners. Yeah. So they, and some of them, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, sometimes your lendability is not great. So it's harder to buy a house. So they're just coming to rent, or they just haven't decided if St. Pete's their home yet and they just want to check it out for 2 years. So there's a lot of that as well.
Hey, Dustin, we're getting to the top of the hour, and we do have a final question that we ask all of our guests. Looking back on everything you've learned, everything you've done, if you were to lose it all today, and this includes not just your net worth, the cash flow, but also your network. You're sitting on the couch. We always say sitting on a couch with a buddy, but I feel like if you've lost your network, like maybe you don't even have a buddy. I don't know.
I might be drinking a Budweiser under an overpass. You
would be. Well, Mitch would probably be there too. So you would have a buddy. So
I would be there. I would be there.
But the point, Dustin, you've lost it all. You have your knowledge, but you don't have your network. You don't have your net worth. You don't have your properties. What do you do first? What's that first day look like? First week, first month? How do you build back to where you are today, or maybe even bigger? But more importantly, what's the first step you take?
First step is easy, like build back your relationships. That's the most important piece of that puzzle, is your network. So going out there and adding value to other people and just becoming like genuine and starting to build your network back up, because without a network, it's kind of hard to do anything by yourself. So I would say that's it, is focus on building back those relationships.
Would you get a job while you're building those networks? Would you go look to flip a house or do a construction project? Or
so I have no money, no income. I'm broke.
You have nothing. Under drinking an old 40 ounce malt liquor under the overpass.
We don't have to get that low.
Yeah, I would. I would have to. I would go get a job. I would just get a job that just was able to, feed groceries, to put a roof over my head, and then build myself back up.
You could go get a job just to, like you just said, just for food and groceries, in other words,
it's a bridge.
It's a bridge. You don't have to go get a massive, like, in other words, if you're building the network, there's going to be massive opportunities over time in that network. You just got to eat. You just got to get enough food on the table.
Well, Dustin, we're at the end of the show. I very much appreciate you being on, man. A lot of value, and I think our audience will get a lot from this. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys too. This was a lot of fun, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to come on your show. So thank you.